Today, we're going to talk about something that's, well, it's literally all around us, cement. Yeah, I know, it sounds kind of boring, but trust me, the story here is anything but. We're about to look at it on a scale that will seriously bend your mind, all through the story of one country's absolutely explosive growth. So yeah, let's get right into it.
Okay, just look at this number for a second. 6.4 gigatons. That's 6.4 billion metric tons. It's one of those numbers that's so huge it's almost meaningless, right? But get this, that's how much cement China used in just 3 years. To try and put that in perspective, a single gigaton is like the weight of 200 million elephants. So what we're looking at here is the weight of over 1 billion elephants made of cement. But what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things?
Well, this quote, which was highlighted by the historian Vaclav Smil and then made famous by Bill Gates, is what really puts it all into perspective. I mean, just let that sink in for a minute. 3 years of Chinese construction versus 100 years of American history. We're talking about the entire century that built the Hoover Dam, the whole interstate highway system, the rise of cities like New York and Chicago. All of that in just 3 years.
Which, brings us to the big question, the one we're going to unpack here. How on earth is that even possible? The numbers just don't seem real. They feel like they defy logic. But here's the thing, they don't. And the story behind them is this incredible tale of development, of hidden costs, and, believe it or not, a really surprising technological twist.
So, to even begin to understand the how, you first have to get your head around the sheer, raw power of China's domestic demand. This was never really about exports. This was about a nation basically rebuilding itself from the ground up and doing it at a speed humanity has just never seen before. The main engine driving this whole thing, urbanization. Every single year, more than 20 million people in China pack up and move from the countryside into cities. Now, to make that feel real, just picture this. Imagine the entire populations of New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago, all moving to brand new cities. Now imagine that happening every single year, year after year. All those people need places to live, roads to drive on, and subways to ride. That requires a mind-boggling amount of construction.
And what's so wild about this is just the incredible speed of it all. Back in 1978, China was a mostly rural country. Fast forward just over 40 years, and boom, it's a majority urban nation. This wasn't some slow, gradual shift over a century like we saw in the West. This was a total demographic revolution, all crammed into the span of a single generation. And you can see this transformation everywhere. Some people estimate that half, literally half, of all of China's infrastructure has been built since the year 2000. We are talking about brand new subway systems, the biggest high-speed rail network on the planet, gigantic airports, and just endless forests of high-rise apartment buildings. And what do they all have in common? They're all built with concrete, which means they all need a ton of cement.
And this is a perfect example of where all that cement is going. It's not just apartment buildings, it's mega projects. What you're seeing here are parts of the South to North Water Diversion Project, which is this absolutely colossal plan to move water from the rainy south to the dry north. I mean, we're talking about digging canals bigger than rivers and boring massive tunnels. It's one of the biggest engineering projects in human history, and it's just one of many that were happening all at the same time.
So let's circle back to that crazy 6.4 gigaton number one last time. Here's maybe the best way to visualize it. If you took all that cement from that 3-year window and just decided to make a giant parking lot, you could pave over the entire big island of Hawaii. It's a scale that's so big, it's almost geological.
But you knew there was a but coming, right? This kind of concrete superpower comes with a pretty steep price tag. Building an entire nation this fast has some serious consequences for the environment and the economy that we just can't gloss over.
You see, making cement is an incredibly energy-hungry process. The industry as a whole is responsible for about 5% of all CO2 emissions worldwide. And since China is making more cement than the rest of the entire world put together, well, it's carrying the lion's share of that environmental weight.
So yeah, there's definitely a darker side to this boom. It's not just a huge carbon footprint. The industry, which is mostly state-owned, created this massive overcapacity. Basically, they were making cement just to make it, not for profit. And on top of that, there are real concerns about low construction standards, with some experts worried that a lot of these shiny new buildings might only last 20 or 30 years before they have to be torn down and rebuilt. Talk about a wasteful cycle. But right when the story seems to be a simple tale of grow at all costs, it takes this really unexpected turn. Because under the surface of this massive, polluting industry, a quiet and incredibly fast technological revolution was taking place.
And the whole story really boils down to the ovens, or kilns, they used to make the cement. Before the year 2000, China was mostly using these old, inefficient, and super polluting things called shaft kilns. But as demand exploded, the country started this huge switch to a new technology, NSP rotary kilns. These things are state-of-the-art, way more efficient, and a heck of a lot cleaner.
And what's so cool here is you can literally see this revolution happen. That map on the left from 2001, that's a country running on old, dirty tech. Now look at the map on the right from just 13 years later. It's almost completely converted to the modern, efficient stuff. This was a nationwide technological upgrade, and they did it in just over a decade. Absolutely incredible.
And this chart just puts numbers to that picture. Back in 2000, the old shaft kilns had about 70% of the market. By 2021, the new, cleaner NSB kilns made up an unbelievable 99% of all cement production. They almost completely replaced the entire technological foundation of an industry in about 2 decades.
So the crazy thing is, this wasn't just about making more cement faster. This radical tech overhaul brought massive and often totally overlooked environmental benefits. In a weird way, the country literally built its way to a cleaner industry.
And the results are, well, they're pretty striking. This chart shows how much pollution was cut compared to what would have happened if they'd stuck with the old tech. Adopting these new kilns led to a 53% drop in particulate matter, a 47% cut in the stuff that causes acid rain, and even a 29% reduction in the climate change impact. So here's the key takeaway. While the total pollution went up because they were making so much more stuff, the amount of pollution per ton of cement absolutely plummeted.
Okay, so what does this all mean? How does this supersized, modernized industry actually stack up against the rest of the world? This is where the story gives us its final and maybe its most surprising twist. First, let's just get our bearings on the scale again. In 2023, China made 2.1 billion tons of cement. The entire rest of the world, all other countries combined, made 2 billion tons. So yeah, it is still, by a massive margin, the undisputed king of cement. But, as we've just seen, how much you make, that raw volume, is only half the story, isn't it? After that huge technological revolution, the really interesting thing to look at is efficiency. Specifically, how much CO2 gets pumped out for every single ton of cement they produce. And this is the outcome that nobody saw coming, because China's entire cement industry is now almost completely made up of modern, state-of-the-art kilns. Its emissions per ton are actually lower than a lot of other countries. That includes developed nations like Canada and other big producers like Vietnam that are still using older tech. So even though its total emissions are huge because of the sheer volume, its industry has become, on a unit-by-unit basis, one of the most efficient on the planet.
And all of that leaves us with this one big provocative question. The story of China's cement industry is a total paradox, right? On one hand, you have staggering consumption and environmental damage, but on the other, you have this lightning-fast jump to hyper-efficiency. It makes you wonder, is this a new model for development? Go for massive scale, no matter the cost, and then use that scale to force an equally massive and rapid push for efficiency. It's a story that is literally reshaping our world, one concrete block at a time.